Hello, Amber. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So excited to be here today. So excited to have our guest on. Are you as excited as I am?
Oh, I'm pumped.
Good, good. It looks like we have quite a few people um in the
Yeah.
chat.
We got Dave Orkin.
Hey,
We
Dave.
got Jesse, Van Johnson. We got Rygon, Kevin Boots, Rick, Stacy Lynn. Hello, Stacy. Kevin, McCoy. We got Jimmy. We got Brian Lynn. And we got Kirby Smith.
Hey, hey, hey. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, and Lauren, of course. Hello, Lauren. All right. So I guess we can bring Jeremy on. Hi,
Hey,
Jeremy.
how are
How are you
you?
today?
I'm doing wonderful. Today has been a great day. Very, very excited to be here tonight.
We're very excited to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
So much fun. Oh, Tanya's back. Never mind, she just goofed us.
Oh,
All right.
that's what happens. These are the perils of a live stream show.
Well, she got a new camera, and she said that it sometimes drops her out. So, all right. Well, let's see.
Technology. I've been
We
there
have
many, many times.
we have like 100 questions to ask you tonight. So, oh,
Oof.
she's back.
Woo!
Woo, thank goodness.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
I love
So,
questions. I love talking about Legions, so I am looking forward to it.
Brian Lynn, thank you for noticing my face.
all right. Jeremy, we want to start talking about like your customizing. I think that's where we probably are going to start.
Okay.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you got into Legions, Mythic Legions, you were customizing them. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, the earliest days, I was an original Kickstarter backer. I actually had followed Four Horsemen Studios back when they were at McFarlane. I bought Seventh Kingdom and Gothtropolis. So all their early lines, I backed the Ravens Kickstarter. So everything that came before Mythic Legions, I was already on the Four Horsemen message board. So I was very much aware of their products. So I backed the original Kickstarter. I went all in plus. And at that time, people were doing what I guess you'd call like a digibash, where we didn't have any figures in hand. So people were using Photoshop to like mix and match parts from the photos, kind of saying like, oh, I'm going to combine this and I'm going to do this, because they said right up front that the figures were going to be somewhat modular. There are, certain figures that had multiple heads and stuff. I don't think we knew how modular they were going to be. But I already, before the wave even arrived, I already had like a list of things I wanted to do. The most basic one, so many of us early on did what I call the Not Warduke, where they took that original barbarian builder that came with the Gorgo style helmet and the bat wings, and just by like swapping those pieces on, they made their like poor man's Dungeons and Dragons Warduke. So very early on, stuff like that, even something simple like taking a blood armor and putting a Carpathia's head on it, so it kind of looked like a vampire in a red suit of armor. Those were some very early pop and swaps, and that did eventually lead into me starting to do customs. The first actual custom I remember doing when they did the first Mythic Legions Kickstarter and they announced the characters Azar and Zazar, they just showed silhouettes of them, and they were like generic silhouettes. They didn't even show what the actual characters looked like. So with those names, a number of people, myself included, thought that they were going to be genie-like characters. So I really got it in my head that Azar and Zazar were going to be a pair of jinn. Ended up not being jinn. They ended up being demons. But one of the first things I did was I took a Zazar, I put actually an Urzok head on it, and I painted an Urzok head blue to go with Zazar to make my blue genie. It's actually still in my collection today.
Wow, that's amazing.
Awesome.
So you just looked at it and said, this is what I want, and figured out a way to get it done. It always amazes me how the creative mind works. And I'm going to pull up some of your photos.
Sure.
This, of course, is at Legions Con, right? Legions Con.
Yeah, and that was this year's display. That was the tribute customs display this year.
And they were so amazing. And then you have so many customs on your thing. So I just went through your top 9 that you posted a couple of days ago. But like, how do you like see a figure and say, hey, I want Sandman, and this is how I'm going to get him done? I mean, by like, what process goes through your mind to be able to pull that together?
Sure. Well, I mean, first off, I think it's worth mentioning when I first really got into customizing in a big way, when I first got on Instagram, I made it a point that I wanted to post something new every single day, and I did it for 2 years. In that 2-year span, not every day was a brand new custom, but most of them were. So across that span of time, that like 700 days or whatever, I posted probably 600 customs or something like that. And
wow.
Some of them were complex. Some of them were very, very simple. Some of them were pop and swaps. But that process of setting a goal for myself, and keep in mind, this was in the earliest days of Mythic Legions customizing. It was so different than it is today. This was when there was a handful of us that were actually doing this. Myself, Dennis, Nikki, Zombie 13, those are some that come to mind from those very, very early days of this. But that process of just doing the work and, forcing myself to just be creative and do the work, that really created kind of a muscle memory, and it created a familiarity with the parts that today, even outside of my work with the studio, it helps me see the potential in a lot of these figures and in a lot of these parts. So when it comes to something like Sandman, this year's Legions Con display was all tribute customs. So the way that I approach a tribute custom is I look at the character I'm trying to represent and I say, what are the visual characteristics of this character that I have to hit? So it's Legions Ladies. So let's talk about Death. Death is one of the most popular characters from the Sandman story. My Mythic Legions Death figure was one of my most popular customs this year. If you look at the character of Death, the distinctive characteristics are her white skin, her almost like she's very goth looking, her goth like outfit, that silver ankh that she wears around her neck, the face paint around her eyes. Those are some of the things. There's a lot of times that she wears a top hat. There's a lot of times she carries an umbrella. She wears combat boots. My goal is not to create a 100% accurate representation that hits every one of those design elements, because an umbrella in Mythos probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So what I do with any of these is I say, what are the things that I have to hit that make sense? What are the elements that I can get rid of? And what you find is if you can pick 5 or 6 distinguishing characteristics as long as you hit the most important one and maybe one or two others, that character will read the way that you want it to read as that character. So when I approached the Endless set here, that was my goal. Every one of these characters, what are the distinctive characteristics that would make sense for a Mythic Legions version of that member of the Endless?
Wow, that's amazing. And she is beautiful.
Oh yeah.
To me, these two ladies here were some of my favorite that I saw all weekend.
I got so much grief for her because I genuinely thought, as we all did, that the Poxus wave was going to ship before Legions Con. So all along, I had pictured using the Thrace head for my death.
Yeah.
And when it ended up not being feasible, the fact that, I pulled some strings. I contacted Eric and I said, hey, can I have George print me a couple Thrace heads to use? I mean, Eric was like, and I told him why, and Eric's like, yeah, of course, that's not a problem. The fact that people said it wasn't fair, I was like, I'm just using all the tools at my disposal.
That's right.
I love that.
So I need somebody to make me a little demon head and do exactly what I need to know, and I need to know who I need to go to get that done. Because this year is the first year that I am going to try my hand at customizing.
Very cool.
So I am super excited, and I'm trying to absorb and learn as much as I can, watching your old videos where you're teaching us all about how you customize and how you do some simple stuff, but also the more intricate stuff. And I have really enjoyed going back and seeing some of your videos and getting an idea of how to do that. And then this one, now, who created this head?
So it was my design. This is pretty much all the critters. That kind of became my trademark, is all the critter customs. And at 2022 Legions Con, that's what my curated display was. It was all the critter customs. And
yeah, and I wanted one of your mice, and I did not get one. And I'm really kicking my rear end that I did not just pull the trigger and buy one.
I'm sure we can rectify that. But but for all of the critters, the team that I've worked with all along for all of them has been Walter DeMarco, who goes by Mass Customs. He does all of the sculpting. He lives in Argentina. And then Len LaGuardia of Wolf King Customs. You both know Len very well. Len does all the printing. Right from the very beginning with my Kitsune head, which is the first one I ever did, that was the team I worked with. So typically how it goes is it depends on the head that I'm doing. Like if I just want, I did a porcupine head, right? The porcupine head was not stylized. It was just a porcupine head. I don't need to sketch that out. I just find photos of porcupines and I'm like, hey, this is the kind of look I want. And I can talk to Walter that way. When I'm doing something more stylized, like with this one here, I may sketch things out because I may say, okay, I want, the ears to look like this, or I want that. And then Walter does a great job of taking my ideas and then fleshing them out, showing me some different stuff along the way so we can go back and forth about any changes that may need to happen. And then he sends the digital files to Len for the actual printing. So that's an example here of what we did. And it's an incredibly interesting process because, for instance, this particular head is 5 different pieces. The ears and the tusks are different pieces than the main base of the head. Because those ears have armor and earrings and the tusks have armor on them, we also did some that I don't think we've ever actually released, but we also did a set that had just plain unadorned ears and plain unadorned tusks for people that wanted to go with a less warrior-like look at it. But this is one of the few parts that I did last year. I kind of slowed down a little bit on custom pieces, custom original parts last year to focus on some other things. But this is one of the big ones that we did. And I did it because I wanted something really over the top and ridiculous, you know, and doing the troll's the biggest mythic figure we have to date. So doing something big for a troll like that, I thought would be a lot of fun. I had never done a troll head that I designed. So because I love the critters, an elephant seemed to make sense.
It is
Looks
amazing.
perfect.
Yeah. I love this. And then your next one you've got here, and this is Lord of the Rings, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken.
Yep. So that was part of this year's display of the tributes.
Yeah, they're amazing. I really, again, love how you're able to look at what we have available, what you have available, and see the different things on these customers that you do, just to make you, when I look at this and when you see these in person, like, you know exactly who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that one fun thing about the Lord of the Rings at Legions Con this year, the Lord of the Rings characters took up, like, they were the main part of the display, including the giant Balrog on top. I didn't even intend on doing Lord of the Rings customs. I had avoided doing them for years because I thought they were too close to Mythic Legions. I was like, well, Lord of the Rings are fantasy-based figures. Mythic Legions are fantasy. I don't really feel like I want to do that. And it was just kind of an accident that I started painting something for fun one Sunday afternoon, and it became a ring wraith. And once I had one ring wraith, I said, well, I feel like I need 8 more now. And I got it in my head because in the books, there are 9 different kings. So as cool as they are in the Peter Jackson movies, they all look the same. At least in their cloaks. So I was like, well, I want to do 9 different looking fallen kings. So that's what I did. And once I had 9 ring wraiths, then I was like, well, let me do maybe just a couple members of the fellowship. I started with these here, and that just like spiraled into that big Lord of the Rings display. But I think there's a cool lesson in that some of my favorite things I've worked on, I haven't planned out. They've been things that I've just allowed the creative energies to flow. I've just spent time enjoying what I'm doing and having fun. And the results of that, project end up being unexpected and delightful sometimes.
Amazing. Amazing. And then this was another one that you said was in your top 9. Now, is that body the Walter?
No, that's a Sentry. So
it's a Sentry. Okay.
Yep. I did this before the Walter figure was available, before even I had it. So this is just a mashup of parts, but the actual main torso parts there from a Sentry, the pauldrons are from a Vorga.
Now, his other hand, what is that? Or is that a weapon in his hand?
It is his hand. So this is another tribute custom. This is based on an old Battle Beast toy. There's a number of people that have been making Battle Beast tributes with cosmic figures, and a lot of them are actually using my critter heads through Wolf King Customs, which is super cool. I didn't have a lot of Battle Beasts when I was a kid. I had one, and it's a funny story. I found it. I had a paper route when I was a kid, and I was on my paper route, and I found a Battle Beast, the hardtop, the turtle, that was someone had dropped. Apparently, it had probably been run over by a car because it was pretty, scuffed up and back. But I loved it. I thought it was super, super cool. And that was the only Battle Beast I ever had. So I decided to do a tribute to that figure. That figure had a claw for one of his hands. So that particular claw here is from an old McFarlane Toys figure called Manga Freak. And just to bring it full circle, Cornboy is a huge fan of Battle Beasts, and his son is a huge fan of Battle Beasts. When Cornboy saw this, he freaked out and he loved it. And he messaged me to say, I'm the one that actually fabricated that claw hand for that original Freak figure at McFarlane Toys all those years ago. That thing it's been in my fodder bin for years. I finally found a reason to use it. And it's crazy how the connections that this studio has, that Cornboy actually fabricated that all those years ago.
That's amazing.
Oh, wow.
It all comes around.
It does.
Oh,
And this was
one.
another one.
Yeah. So a lot of these are tribute customs because I do have a limited amount of time to work on customs these days. So because I knew very early on that my exhibit at Legions Con was going to be focused on tribute customs, a good percentage of my output for 2023 was for that display.
Right.
This is a tribute to an old Dungeons and Dragons figure that was released by LJN. So LJN put out the original toys, and I had them when I was a kid. I absolutely loved them. Dungeons and Dragons are a huge part of what I grew up with, the kind of fantasy I grew up with, and it's what attracted me in a big way to Mythic Legions. So doing a custom of one of those vintage figures I thought would be a lot of fun. And at Legions Con, I had a number of Dungeons and Dragons tribute figures, and I even bought the original vintage figures and had those on display on the table as well in front of my homages so people could see where they had been inspired from.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
that is cool. That's very amazing. Again, just flabbergasted. And this one is very close to my heart. I am not a sci-fi girl. I don't watch sci-fi. I do not get into sci-fi. When Kevin showed me the cosmic, I was like, you just get what you want. I don't really care.
Okay.
And then I saw Slog, and I was like, you got to get him for me. And he sits on my desk, and I love him. Love him. So this one means a lot to me because it's a tribute using a figure that I truly love.
Yeah. So this is another one of the custom pieces that I did last year, once again with Walter DeMarco and with Len. I knew I wanted to do like a statement piece for an early Cosmic custom. And I knew that there were going to be so many people doing big-eyed aliens and doing bounty hunters. Like I knew a lot of the stuff that we saw early on was exactly what I expected. So the first thing I did was I looked at the Cosmic line and I said, which figure in this wave is going to be the hardest to customize? And it's obviously Slog because he's a brand new build. No other parts are compatible with them, so you can't pop and swap. So I said, I'm going to customize Slog. And I got in my head that I wanted to do a tardigrade, which, if you know, tardigrades are these like microscopic organisms that can live in incredible extreme environments, including outer space. So the idea of creating this big, nasty tardigrade on the Slog body ended up really, really appealing to me. So I did take Slog apart. I painted all of his limbs. I removed his canisters, which those just pop out. And those little arms are from an old Star Wars, actually 3 3/4 inch figure. They just so happened that they had little sleeves on the arms that worked really well with the little sleeves on Slog. So I put that all together and painted that up. And that was a really fun figure to post last year.
That's just amazing. When I saw that one, of course, again, I told Kevin I had to have Slog. He was just really cool and so chunky and so heavy, and I love him.
And I've seen, so this was the first head I think anyone put out for Slog. Since then, I've seen a couple other heads that are out there. I know Len has like the big eyeballs and he's got like a wolf one. I've seen a frog that I know Nime did a whole bunch of really cool paints on that. There's definitely been some other cool heads that I've seen out there for Slog now.
Yeah. So cool.
And we'll see that body again at Four Horsemen. I mean, I've seen people ask, like, are you ever going to reuse that body? And it's like, well, when do we not? Like when, that's actually kind of, I mean, lately we've actually, the success of the line has allowed Eric to get a little drunk on new tooling.
Yeah.
Where there was a point where like a wave, I mean, if you look at like the Aerothere wave, right? The Aerothere wave is all new characters with a handful of newly tooled parts. And that that was very much the mentality in those earlier days of the line. But because of the success and the support from the community, it's almost like now Eric feels like he's cheating if he uses existing parts. And it's funny because there'll be parts that we'll pull out and we'll look at it. We'll be like, where the heck did that come from?
Yeah.
Like, and we realize it's only ever been used on like one figure and we've never reused it. So we definitely can dip into the library more than we have lately. We will certainly do that. We will see Slog get reused in some form again.
Yeah, I know that whenever I find a character that I love, that eventually we see bits and pieces of those characters come back around. But he's just, I don't, again, not a sci-fi girl, did not think I would be all into the Cosmic Legions. But the artistry is there and they are beautiful. But Slog is just, I told Kevin from the very beginning, I gotta have him.
And I mean, to keep it topical, the ladies of Cosmic Legions are pretty darn cool. Like,
yes.
Not taking anything away from the females in Mythos, but the ladies of Cosmic have definitely been top notch.
They are amazing. Amazing. All right. And then this one is another one that you had on your top 9 list.
Yeah. And this is actually my most recent one. So a critter that I didn't design, actually. So I got that head at Legions Con. So I walked by the table that had Jesse and Brian and Mark Rivera at it, right on the corner.
Right.
Mark is a sculptor. Mark Rivera is a sculptor who he's a Legion shop artist and everything. He's got a bunch of stuff he does for himself. He kind of flies a little bit under the radar. He doesn't have the same kind of name recognition as some of the other sculptors out there, but I love Mark's work. He's got such a good vision, such cool parts. And I saw this one. I picked up this one in a walrus head from him at Legions Con. And when I got back from Legions Con, I had this head and I had actually a monkey head that Anthony from Noble Bear gave me. And both of those went on my table immediately because right out of the gate, I was inspired. I came back from Legions Con just with a lot of energy. And those were the first two that I put together. So that head came from Mark Rivera, and the rest of the body, I think the only other part on it that's not Legions is the tail. I needed like a chameleon tail. So that is actually one of those, like, I don't know, Safari Limited, like those rubber type figures you get at, like, you know, Michael's or whatever. I got one of those and sliced it and modified it to fit in the back.
Oh, that's cool. Oh. Now,
Mark's in the chat right there.
There he goes.
all the parts are a mixture of Cosmic and Mythic, right? In here, I mean, you've got Cosmic and Mythic both.
Yep, they are. So I really like, for whatever reason, I've always liked the smaller characters. A lot of my critters I've used either goblin or dwarf builds on because they're either, you know, smaller characters like the mice or whatever, or they're chunky characters like beavers and, you know, badgers and things like that. So we haven't really gotten diminutive characters in Cosmic yet. So this is a combination of a Goblin Legion builder for like the upper legs and the upper arms. But then the Cosmic armor parts that we see here, those are all from Embera. They already had the green color, so it already worked really well. So the lower arms, the lower legs, the waist part, the pauldrons, those are all from Embera.
Gotcha. Okay. Very, very cool. And then this one is the one you were talking about earlier. Yep. What a great character.
And that's obviously that's the Lord of the Rings Balrog. I didn't show that before Legions Con. I wanted that to be a bit of a surprise. So that is a Brontis figure that I repainted. The wings are from an old Lord of the Rings Fell Beast dragon. And the head is a head that Emil Wickman sculpted and Len at Wolfking printed. I actually reached out to Len specifically. I told him exactly what I was using it for. And I said, hey, can you send me one of those heads? I want to use it for the Balrog. So I did that, didn't show it in advance because I wanted that to kind of be the big statement piece on the top of the display. It's funny that I made it knowing I probably wouldn't come home with it because I genuinely have nowhere to put it. It's huge. The wingspan is gigantic on it. So I brought it there knowing that it probably wouldn't come home with me, but I also didn't want it to go just anywhere. So when Big Dub said that he really wanted that piece plus one of the ring wraiths, I know he's a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I was really happy that it ended up going in his collection.
Yeah, it just is an amazing. And really, when you see the tributes that you did and you walk up, I mean, he is so front and center and was absolutely gorgeous standing up there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
And then this one is another one that you did.
So this is
Jeremy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, Tanya.
Oh,
I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me, Amber. Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah, go ahead. So this one is another one that you did.
This is my version of a character called Baba Voss from a show on Apple TV called See. So it's SEE. So that's a show. I don't know if either of you have seen that show, but I stumbled on that last year. Jason Momoa plays the main character, and it's a absolutely wonderful story.
I've heard of it.
It's so good. Yeah, it's set in like a post-apocalyptic world where everyone in the world has lost their sense of vision. So everyone is blind except these two young children who were born with the power of sight. And, you know, Jason Momoa plays Baba Voss, who fluctuates between being this like warm, doting father who's just will do anything for his family. But when he's backed up against the wall and he has to fight, he is terrifying. He's like, if you've seen him on Game of Thrones, he's like that level of terrifying. So
he's my favorite on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, great story. I really loved the character and I wanted to do something for it. So that's what I did here.
Yeah. And we have a question for you too. Is the whip on the ball rig made of copper?
No, it's not. That's just the way it's painted. The whip is actually, that was a fun story too. So I needed a weapon for the Balrog, and in, you know, Lord of the Rings and the Peter Jackson movie, he has that big flaming whip. So there's a line of toys called Battletoads put out by Premium DNA. At PowerCon, Premium DNA were right on the side of Four Horsemen Studios. And I do know the owners of Premium DNA, Matt and Ben. So I went up to them and I said, hey, quick question. Are you going to get like replacement parts for the Battletoads figures? And he said, yeah, eventually. Why? And I said, this is really weird, but I'm making a gigantic custom Balrog and I need a whip. And you have this giant figure that comes with a really big whip. It would be perfect, but I feel bad buying, it's like an $80 figure. I feel bad buying the figure just for that whip. So he's like, oh yeah, no problem. When those parts come in, you know, I'll let you know. And I said, okay, cool. And then I walked away and he walks up to me a few minutes later and he's like, you know what, just take this. And he hands me like the paint master or like the prototype whip. It was a master from the studio, but he hands it to me and just says, here, take it. So super, super nice guy that he did that for me. And that's what I used. That Battletoads whip was modified to work here for the Balrog's whip.
That's awesome. What a great story. And then this was posted either today or yesterday, and getting ready for 2024 Samurai.
Yeah, so my approach to Legions Con for the past few years has been what I call a curated exhibit. So I have so many customs that I have to decide every year, what do I bring? And, you know, for the first few years, I brought a mix of some new stuff and some old stuff, but there was no cohesive theme to what I was displaying. So starting back in 2022, when I did the Critters display, where it was a retrospective look at all the critter customs that I had done over the 2 years that I had created those parts. And then this year was the art of the tribute custom. So I really like this idea of having a curated display and being very, very specific. So I had a few different ideas that I was tossing around, but what I landed on was basically reimagining the realm of mythos through like the lens of feudal Japan and like samurai culture. I did a series of samurai inspired Mythic Legions figures probably 3-4 years ago that I called Mythic Shoguns, and they were super well received. People actually might be more than that now that I think about it. It might be longer than that it's been. But they were really well received. I had a super fun time doing them. So that's my thought is when I did the Mythic Shoguns previously, I just did like a samurai goblin and a samurai vampire and a samurai skeleton and so forth. For this display, as you can see here with this teaser, what would Attila Leasir look like if his design was influenced by samurai in feudal Japan? I don't want to create actual like authentic samurai figures. I want to create a very mix of samurai and Mythic Legions and fantasy, like really that kind of look through the lens of Mythic Legions. So this was my teaser, and that's what I'm working on for this year's Legions Con.
Well, that's going to be awesome. No, I can't either.
So I have a question for you, Jeremy.
Of course.
How do you like manage your time between doing like all these customs and working for Four Horsemen and then your family?
It's certainly a challenge. And it's challenging too because I never feel like I'm off. You know, I love my job. Absolutely. I'm so blessed to be able to do what I do, but I do work in an environment where my hobby and my job are one and the same these days. So sometimes it is hard to find that separation where I take time that's not involved with this. But I have a great loving family. They're super, super supportive. My wife and my kids, they came to Legions Con the last few years to help us out. So they're very supportive of what I do. My wife is super thrilled that I'm living my dream and I'm doing this. So they are very accommodating when it comes when I say, hey guys, I need to be downstairs tonight doing an interview. So, you know, I'll be up a little bit later than usual. But it's just finding time and knowing what's important, you know, knowing that, trying to plan ahead, you know, knowing that one of the reasons I'm working all year on this exhibit is so I'm not crunching in the last month to get this done. Because if I do that, then I won't have time for everything else. By starting now, I have enough time to say, okay, you know what? This Saturday, I'm not going to customize because I want to go for a hike. I want to go, you know, out for a bike ride or something. I'm going to see the family. So it's really just making, you know, working hard to make time for everything and knowing what's important and knowing when to say no. You know, there are times like even with the upcoming shows, we have a really big show schedule this year. I would love to be at every single one of them. I know that's not feasible. I know sometimes I skipped ToyCon New Jersey. That was in December. I haven't skipped ToyCon New Jersey since 2018, but I literally said, you know what? I'm going to skip this one. I don't need to be there, and I feel like I need to be home.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, though.
Well, it's awesome that you actually take time away from this with your family to go do stuff. And I mean, it's got to be hard because you are in toys all the time. Talking about toys, playing with toys, painting toys. All the time, writing books about toys.
I'm also very accessible. You know, I think one of the reasons that Four Horsemen Studios has been so successful is people feel a connection to us. You know, how many other toy companies, if you have a question, can you genuinely Facebook message a member of the studio and just say, hey, Jeremy, I can't figure out this thing. Can you answer this question for me? I get so many messages every single day, and I genuinely try to give every single one of them personal attention to answer their question. I can't always answer immediately because sometimes I genuinely am not available to answer, but I always try to get back to them. So that's definitely challenging as well, but it's also an important part of who we are as a company and who we are as a community. So as difficult as it is sometimes, it's something that, we need to maintain.
Yeah. Well, and I think that does set you guys apart. I mean, going to Toylanta last year and being able to just hang out with all the guys that were there and just stand there and talk and play second day the first day when you guys got out the toys to play with and did some pop and swaps right there. And it is absolutely amazing that you guys are available for stuff like that.
I mean, you even invite a bunch of random people into the place.
Yeah. I've had multiple times where I've had just fans, just fellow toy fans, fellow Legions fans over to my house where I've invited them over, people I've never met before, invited them over, fed them and had them hang out and check out the collection and stuff. You mentioned Toylanta, Tanya. I mean, being in line before the doors opened and just hanging out with everybody and answering questions and talking like that. Like, I know I had multiple people in line tell me how impactful that was for them, how much it meant to them that I did that. And it meant just as much to me. Like, that is one of my enjoyable memories from that weekend at Toylanta.
Yeah, I loved it. I was very, very Legions Con last year for me was overwhelming. There was a lot. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of everything in 2022. So when we went to Toylanta and you and Walter both came out and spent a lot of time talking to us, answering questions, just hanging out, just talking and getting to know not only you and Walter, but you guys getting to know us as well. I think that to me is probably, amazing. And then to be able to go through the line, to be able to see you guys, to talk to you guys, to spend time. Whereas Legions Con, like, you don't have a lot of time. Yes. Hey, how's it going? But then you're on to the next thing. It's not like you have that kind of time at Legions Con that you have at some of the smaller places that you go. I hate that we missed Heroes this past year. We just couldn't make it because I was hoping, to get down there and see you guys again. But to me, that is one of the very unique things about Four Horsemen that you don't find anywhere else. But that was awesome. If you are not working or painting, what is one of your favorite things to do?
I mean, so I do spend a fair amount of time outside when I'm not working. It seems like a lot of my activities tend to be out of the house. I'll be kayaking. So a lot of my activities with my wife. So we'll go kayaking, we'll go bike riding, we'll go hiking. So I do a lot of that type of outdoor activities as well. When it comes to vacation, I like to travel as well. I've done a bunch of different international trips, and I'm terrified of traveling. I'm a really nervous traveler, and the way that I combat that is I just do it and I just go. So I've had a lot of fun taking some different trips. That's probably it. Kind of going outside and stuff. Reading. I like to read as well.
So if you had to pick your favorite place that you've been, not necessarily on vacation, but it could have been a vacation, but the favorite place that you've been in the world, where is it?
I know the answer.
Iceland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been to Iceland twice, and I'm going to be going back for my 50th birthday. So Iceland was the first international destination that I traveled to. And I tell people all the time that if you are nervous about international travel, go to Iceland because it's really easy to get to. So I live in New England. From Boston, it's like a 5-hour flight into Iceland.
Wow.
If you're worried about language, everyone there speaks English, so there's no language barrier. It's super easy to get around. Iceland is an island, and there's one road called the Ring Road, Route 1, that's around the entire island. If you look at a map of Iceland, by the way, there's nothing in the middle. No people live in the middle. It's glaciers and volcanoes and dragons. That's literally what's in the middle of Iceland. So everything is on the outer ring, off that main road. The food is amazing. I absolutely loved Iceland. When I go back for my 50th, I am going to rent like a camper van, and we're going to drive all 800 miles of the ring road because there are parts. When you go to Iceland, by the way, the population of Iceland is like 350,000 people or something. I live in Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the country. There's like 1 million people in Rhode Island. Okay. So the fact that this this fairly large country, this island only has like 350,000 people, and something like 2/3 of them are in the capital of Reykjavik. So once you get out of the capital, it is barren. There's like way, way more sheep than there are people. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. Wonderful people, wonderful food. So without a doubt, Iceland is my favorite place I've been.
So I always heard that Iceland was green and Greenland was ice.
Yes.
Iceland is green depending when you go. So the 2 times I went in September and I went in April. April, it was not green. April, it was still very much on the tail end of winter. So it was still very, very brown. Gotcha. September, it was very, very green.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Well, it looks like we're going to have to plan a trip. Amber, you and I are going to have to plan a trip to Iceland because it sounds like it's amazing.
I've never been on an airplane, so that helps all.
All right. Amber, you had another question about customizing, I believe, before we leave that behind.
So, what is the most expensive or popular piece that you've used as fodder?
Most expensive? Years ago, when I was really deep into the customizing, and I was pushing myself to just pump out new ideas, I was merciless in what I would tear apart. There's 2 ways to look at it. I mean, I've pulled apart Otho figures and things like that. They weren't worth what they are now back when I did them. So that may not be fair to say. I mentioned my first custom has a painted Urzak head on it. That may not be fair to say. I did buy I don't know what the brand it was. It was from a video game called Legacy of Kain or something like that.
Okay.
Soul Reaver, I think it was. It was like a vampire.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about.
I'm not a video gamer, but it was a vampire head, and I was actually doing a series of tributes to Robin Hood. And for the character of Will Scarlet, I said, you know what? I'm going to make Will Scarlet a vampire because I'm going to use the word scarlet as in blood. And that particular figure has kind of a wrap around his face. And if you pull it off, you can see his teeth. So I bought one of those, and I think I paid $120 to literally buy that figure, pop the head off, pop the cowl off, and put it on a custom figure. And then I had the rest of the body, and I was like, oh, I don't need this.
I love it.
Yeah, Ryan's got it. The character's name is Raziel. But yeah, that's the most expensive figure that I've ever purchased specifically to tear it apart.
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome. Okay, now we are going to go back here. I want to.
I love that photo.
So, one of the things that, again, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but how absolutely accessible that the Four Horsemen are, that you are, that all of that whole group is
Yeah.
to the fans. But one of the things that I love about it is the tribute figures that you guys do. You were the first. How does that feel? I mean, when you sit there and think to yourself, they're doing a tribute figure to me. What I mean, like, can you take us back to that time when they
Yeah.
said, "Hey, we're doing this tribute figure for you"?
Well, I will say that I don't know that I'd say I'm the first, because I'm probably the first from this batch. I'm certainly the first Legions Con one.
Right.
But this has been something that they've done for many, many years, if nothing through the naming. Like there have been a bunch of names that they've used over the years that are a nod to another friend of the studio or somebody that they know.
Gotcha.
When it came to Sir Girard, the 2022 Legions Con was, the first time, because we had talked, we did 2018, which was just kind of a meetup. And then 2019 was a meetup. 2020 was, the virtual one. So it was 2021 that was the first time that the studio said, you know what, we want to make it special. We think we want to do an exclusive figure. And I was like, that's awesome. That'll be great. And I was just thinking like, wow, that's going to bring more fans in, more people that want to come. And I remember the conversation, it was with Eric, and Eric said, we want it to be a tribute to you. We want to call it Sir Girard. And I was like speechless. I was absolutely blown away that they would do that. But I kid you not, I was more excited when they said I got to design it. When they were like, Eric said, what do you want? And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, you get to design the figure. That, because this was a point pre-Legions Con 2021, I was only working on a part-time basis with the studio. So I didn't have the creative role that I have today. Today, there are actually a number of figures in the line that I've gotten to design. Back then, this was my first full figure that I got to pick the parts and really put it together. I was limited to the parts that were available up into the Aerothere wave. So, wanting to do something that I thought would be cool, that I thought fans would like, that I thought would actually sell because it was a Legions Con figure. That's where I came up with the idea. The Gorgo helmet's always been my favorite, so I wanted to use that helmet. And at the time, the scapular head was super hard to find. Like, it was because it was only on Scapular and Celtis, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember saying to Eric, saying what I wanted. I wanted the scapular head, and Eric said, I like everything about it. It's all approved except the scapular head. I don't want to use that. And I was like, okay, well, why? And he was like, well, I really only like to use the main character heads. I don't like to reuse them. The PowerCon figures are fine because those are outside of canon anyway. So Celtis and Adamon, they're not actually part of our story. They're just fun toys. So using the Atlas and scapular heads on them didn't bother him. But this character was not necessarily outside of canon. So when I said to him, I said, well, here's why I want to use it. I want to make the character a changeling who's partnering with Lord Vitiris. And we've already written that Lord Vitiris is scheming to kind of take Scapular's power. So his changeling associate can appear to look like Scapular to kind of get some people to follow him and stuff. And when I told him why I wanted to use it, how it made sense in the story, he was like, yeah, that's super cool. We can do it.
That's cool.
But yeah, it was definitely an overwhelming feeling to get that honor. And it's something that I very much remember. So I've it's been awesome that the last 2 years, back in 2022, we were able to do that for the My Wife Is Gonna Kill Me crew. Being able to surprise them with their namesake figures was a ton of fun. And then getting to do it this year with the Walter figure was once again a really special thing to be a part of.
Well, and then to be able to surprise Michael and Brad during G-Con, I mean, brought me to tears just sitting there watching in the audience. So it was it's very
it's
emotional, and something that you will not find anywhere else. I mean, people are just not doing that. And for you guys as a toy company to recognize your fans in that way is pretty amazing.
They're our friends. That's the end of the day. They're good people who love what we do. They support what we do. And look, Broder needed a name. I gotta call him something. Why not do something fun? Why not do a nod to somebody that is going to enjoy that kind of recognition? The fact that we are creating these characters and creating this lore allows us to do things like that. And it's, like I said, it's just as much fun for us to be able to do that as it is for people to get that recognition. And I've told this before, and I told Michael at G-Con, the name Amir Kaspar, that didn't come up because of Scapular in the G-Con wave. I had written that name into the book like a year ago.
Wow.
So I knew that Scapular's alter ego of the Amir was called Amir Kaspar. And it worked really well because I did it because I know that's Michael's favorite character, and Michael's a wonderful, wonderful person. I wanted to do that. But that name Kaspar, it also has a very Middle Eastern type feel to it, the way that I spelled it. Kaspar is one of the names of the 3 kings from the Bible story. So that whole kind of environment I thought worked really well because the Sons of the Red Star have a very Arabian kind of mystical feel to them. So whenever things can work out, that's one of the tricks, I think, to doing it like that. We don't want to pander, right? We don't just want to give a character a name that doesn't really make a lot of sense. We want it to make sense in the lore. And when it also gets to be a bit of a tribute there and it has that extra layer and it works, that to me is how you hit on all the different points that you want to hit on.
Yeah. It's amazing. And although I like Scapular, out of the 2, my favorite, I love that silver mask. I love that silver mask. So Amir is probably one of my favorite characters of the line.
Yep.
Now,
well,
let's not go crazy because, Neve, I mean, come on.
Well, yes, Neve is.
But
she has been so popular. We thought that every time we drop a wave, there are surprises. We figured Nieve would be popular, but her popularity has been so much more than we thought it would be.
Right.
It is amazing.
She's
and
really
she is a great figure. But there are a lot of good figures in this line. And I know that everybody has talked about the figures a lot. So I really didn't want to do that again, but she is amazing. I cannot wait for her. I think she's going to be great. And then you had, you guys have really worked, I think, in the last several years, bringing on some amazing women characters. The Thrace that's getting ready to drop when you guys send out Poxus, and then Beluelith. She is beautiful.
Love
such a great character, but and then the 3 great characters in this last line that you guys put out. So the sculpt, everything that you guys are doing as far as lifting, the women up in this line and really, carrying that forward, I think, means a lot to us. Alithia, great figure, absolutely. But
so it's funny, I'll tell you, it's no secret, Eric, everything you see in Mythic and Cosmic Legions and Figure Obscura is sculpted by Eric Treadaway. So he is, and which is a very unique situation. The amount of new sculpting that we do in a calendar year and the fact that it's all done by one person is unprecedented. The amount of output that he has. He has said before, he has a really hard time sculpting females. Like, give Eric a monster to sculpt and he'll kill all the sculptures, but monsters are his bread and butter. He loves sculpting monsters. Females, he always has said that he finds challenging, which is amazing because he has sculpted some of the most gorgeous female characters I think we have seen in action figure history. All the ones you just mentioned, they are absolutely so wonderful. But I think one of the things that is worth mentioning is the female characters that we are doing, and this is literally coming at you from behind the scenes. We never sit there and say, oh, we have to check a box. Like, oh, we need to add a female just because someone is saying we have to add a female. We actually don't do any of that. We do look at the output. We do look at the mix of a wave. And we say, hey, is this too heavy on something? Is it too light on something else? We want there to be diversity among the wave, but simply because we know people like different things and we want there to be a little something for everybody. But I think it's important that our approach is that these characters, representation is super important, but representation in Mythic Legions is because mythos, Cosmerium, are diverse places, and we want to see that diversity. We want the characters that are presented to be important parts of the story and not just fillers to check that box off saying that we had to have something. So the characters that you see, you mentioned Alithia. Alithia is a major character in the story. One of the biggest characters in the entire Mythic Legion story is Artemis Silvercord. Artemis is a major character. She's so much fun to write. So these female characters, and those are just two examples, these female characters, they are not just there as tokens. And I think that's why they are so well received and they are so good, because they are important.
Right. And they are amazing. And I don't know if you've heard or not, but the whole reason why I am into Mythic Legions is because my husband got a Vitus, and I looked at it and I said, this is great. I mean, just the artistry of that one character. And he said, yeah, and they're coming out with this one. And he showed me a picture of Artemis riding Alder.
Yep.
And I was in. Yes, get me that. And from that point forward, I have been like, yes, let's do this.
One of my first was Thalen at Zolocon.
Yep.
Yeah, I love
another
Thalen
great
too.
figure.
Yeah, great. All right, off track, but we're going to get back on. Okay.
No problem.
So this was really cool having you as your own tribute figure, Legions Cons figure, but then to have you show up as a ghost on one of the boxes. Come on, Jeremy, this is cool.
Oh yeah, it was super cool. And this, I talked about this on my show with Nate last night. It really did start because he was painting, and I got to art direct because I'm such like an unapologetic geek when it comes to Christmas Carol. I absolutely love Dickens' Christmas Carol. So Eric kind of stepped back a little bit on the art direction for like that package and everything. And he was like, look, Jeremy knows the story way better than me. Nate, talk to him. He's got some ideas. So I have a role in it all the time, but I had a heavier role in this one than I usually do. And Nate painted a character, and I said, "Is that Sherry?" And it wasn't, but it looked enough like her that he's like, "That's kind of a cool idea." So Nate started painting faces from the studio on the different, ghosts and everything. And I didn't tell him to paint me as one of the ghosts. He just surprised me with that. I did see it in advance, of course, but he surprised me with that. And yeah, it was definitely pretty cool.
And then to put your face on the bottom of the mug, I think
that
when that picture, I think, is where everybody said, "Wait a minute, is that Jeremy?"
And that, honestly, that kind of embarrassed me a little bit. So George did that because the bottom of the mug was just going to be the Figure Obscura Marley Key logo.
Yeah.
And then George said, "Well, we've got to put a ghost on the bottom of the mug. It's got some space. Let's move it around." And George is the one that said, "Put Jeremy's face there." And I said, "No, don't do that." Because, it felt a little too self-congratulatory. Like, so going back to the figure of me, Sir Girard, there's actually a 3D printed head of me that exists that Saba from Planetary Dog Toys did. When my figure got released, I specifically said, I don't want that head sold. The head was done for me as a gift. Dennis Derby had him do it for me as a gift, and I do have one in my collection. I didn't want that head to be sold for the Sir Girard. And it was a personal decision because having the figure named after me is cool enough. I don't need my face on there. It's one of those things where I put myself out there so much and I try to be very, very genuine. But I also try very much, whenever anyone directs any praise or attention, I try to always be mindful, because it's true, to say, like, "Hey, thank you very much. Everything we do is a team effort." Like, I don't work in a vacuum, and I never want anybody to feel like this is about me. This is not about me. This is about Four Horsemen Studios. This is about the Mythic Legions or the Legions community. So I never want to be too self-congratulatory, and admittedly, I'm probably overthinking it. But being on the bottom of the mug worried me a little bit. But George thought it was so darn funny that he was just like, "Well, we're going to do it." So, and it seemed to hit a chord. So people seem to like it. So I guess it's a success.
I think it was a success. I think everybody really enjoyed it. And, I get where you're coming from. It is a team effort. You guys are all in there together. And I think that one of the next picture, yes.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this says a lot about you guys. I mean, you guys break bread together. You guys spend time together. You guys talk together. But you guys are, I mean, it truly feels like it is a family.
Yeah, it's very, very much. And, you look at this figure, this photo, what's great about this photo is, these are all, so the only person at that table who's not a full-time member of the studio is Big Greg. Everybody else there is a full-time member. Greg is, a member who's always at the studio. He's there. He just has another full-time job. Joe started as a mega fan of the line. Nate started as a mega fan. Diego started as a fan. I started as a fan. Greg started as a fan. That is something that's special about this company, that the people that are contributing are the ones that are brought into that family to be a part of what we are doing here. And that is a big part of why I think everything is as genuine as it is.
Yeah. Again, never going to find this in another toy company ever. I just love that about this. And then I did want to ask you, you've done a number of these and been the host. How does it feel to sit up there with the creators and yourself and talking to a room full of people, and I'm in the back left corner, about this line and about these toys, and to see their reactions firsthand? How does that make you feel?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, I know what my skill sets are. I'm good in a room. I'm good in front of a crowd. When I was younger, I played in a bunch of really, really horrible bands, and I was the front man. So, everyone else in the band, they were, more concerned with playing music and setting up and breaking down. I was just there to be a part of the environment. I was there to mingle. So I've always been very, very comfortable on stage and being the leader. And it helps that other people, so Eric and myself are the two that always lead these broadcasts. Eric and myself are very, very similar in so many ways. We both have very, very similar childhoods. We're both about the same age. We both came from very similar socioeconomic backgrounds, play with the same toys. It's amazing. We work together so well because we have so much in common. One thing we definitely diverge on is Eric is very shy and doesn't necessarily like to be in front of the crowd speaking, and I thrive on it. So it works really, really well when we are together because I get to do what I do best and Eric gets to do what he does best. But
That's awesome.
But it does feel amazing to be there. People have asked me many times if it's hard to keep the secrets, if it's hard not to reveal. And, the analogy has been made many, many times that it's like, Santa Claus on Christmas. It's like being able to be Santa and, bring out some of this amazing stuff and, present the gifts, seeing the light in kids' eyes when the magic of Christmas morning is revealed. I genuinely get to do that for an entire community of Legions fans, this room of Legions fans and all of the Legions fans that are watching at home, to be able to reveal that. It's so, so much fun. And I spent a ton of time thinking about those reveals. Like, how are we going to pitch it? Everything we do in terms of the order and some of the key things I want to say, it's all very, very deliberate because how I want to actually unveil it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was my third G-Con, and every year it gets better and better, I feel.
Well,
I think Amber,
everybody was on their feet.
Oh yeah. I believe that once you get to number 3, you're just grandfathered in for all the rest. I think that if you can get to 3, if you can actually have your name pulled 3 times, I think that just automatically you become grandfathered in.
Yeah, I'm just a part of the fixture now.
That's what it is. It's like, well, we got to have Amber and Ryan here. We can't do it without them.
It's not the same.
I've already told Ryan that I'm up next. If I don't get pulled this year, then I'm going with Amber. So Ryan, you got to sit this one out because I got to go. Oh, that's great. Okay. And then the other thing that surprises me is when we were at Toylanta, the first time that you saw a big person dressed as one of the little characters, little toys that you sell, what was your feeling on the how does that make you were you oh my gosh, what happened? I mean, to me that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, the kind of things that we see from the community is overwhelming. People getting tattoos. And it's funny. I have a Legions tattoo, so it's crazy that blows me away because I've done it. But it's true. People getting tattoos, people doing cosplays like that, people just showing their absolute fandom in such incredibly creative and impactful ways is really, really cool. I mean, and it certainly doesn't hurt that John and Rebecca are 2 incredibly cool people. They're so friendly. They were so nice. They're genuine fans. Yeah. So the fact that they were such fans of our work and they wanted to take it into their realm and do their versions of it was very, very rewarding. Yeah, that was a highlight of Toylanta for sure, with getting to meet them and see those costumes.
And here you got a picture of them holding the actual figures that they are designed from, and how accurate it is just amazing. But then there were a couple of others that were in there as well that had done, and again, amazing.
Yep.
This was hilarious. I was not there on that day when he was walking around, but when I saw this picture, I literally laughed out loud.
Well, what I loved about this is he was walking around. I did not know what he was supposed to be. And he's walking around and he comes up because his arms were down. And I'm like, what are you supposed to be? And he doesn't answer. He just raises his arms. And immediately I was like, oh my God, you're the little QC issue thing that we put. It just, because at first I didn't read the thing around his waist as a cup until he raised his arms. And then I was just like, that is so funny. And we had sent those out like a couple weeks before Legions Con. So it was still super topical and super fresh. That was so much fun to see him there.
Hilarious. And then
there
Alithia, oh my goodness, how amazing that costume was, and how close it was to Alithia. It was really, really I was super excited I got to see these costumes, because I had seen the other ones. I wasn't there very much on Saturday, but I got to see these costumes on Sunday, and they were amazing. And then let's talk about the book.
Oh yeah, so I posted that today as a fun little teaser.
Fun little teaser. So I told you guys that I'm a big reader. Big reader. So I am super excited about the book. It is probably one of the things that I am most excited about, hopefully for this year.
Plan.
So you have finished it, the first one.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is now.
So the process.
Where in the process?
I've said before that, the story of Mythic Legions, because since the very beginning, there has been a story. It's just never been presented in a linear format. So I actually pitched the idea of this Mythic Legions book back during the weekend of Legions Con 2021. This was shortly before I came on full time. I pitched it when I was still working part-time, because it was a project that I really wanted to see done. And I really wanted to do this project. So I went to the studio, and Nate had given me a piece of art, and I had laid out like what a sample book page would look like. I brought one of the big illustrated Harry Potter books that I'm kind of modeling this presentation after, and the owners loved it. They thought it was a great idea. Obviously, once I got started, I'd come on full time. So now it's part of my job. But the idea is that Eric Treadaway, who created everything here, this is his world that's really been created. He's done a really great job of creating a framework for the story and some major elements that are supposed to happen. But what I got to do was really take those, kind of touch points and connect them and say like, okay, and figure out how characters get from each point. And there's a lot of story that happens between those points. Even those points, when Eric says something like, oh yeah, at the siege of Shelgard is where the Soul Spiller gets taken, because that's where the Soul Spiller was. That's something that's in some of the bios. That's a piece of the story. So he may say that, but we don't know anything about that battle. We don't know how it happens or anything. So I get to write all of that. So the first part was really, writing out the first story. And this was conceived as 2 different volumes. Now, I knew what I needed to cover in part 1. Part 2, which I'm starting here, is a little bit less certain. I think everything else I have to do, I can cover in this volume, but I'll know once I start writing whether or not it needs to be a 3rd volume. We'll figure that out. As of right now, we're thinking it's 2 volumes for this first major 10-year story arc. So the first volume was completely written. Eric Treadaway was the first one to look at it specifically from a lore standpoint, needing to make sure, because there's a lot of things I did in there that are not from Eric. They're not things that he created. I had to, when you have to get a character from one point to another, you have to determine why they would do that. So there's a lot of backstories I had to create. There's a lot of connections I had to create that have no precedent in any of the bio. So I had to make sure that all that stuff was okay. And I had mentioned last night on my show that working with Eric is amazing because he never says no. If there's something he's not sure about, he always says, let's talk about this. Like I said, with that scapular head, you talk through why you want to do that. And if there's a good reason and it's a good idea, he's like, that's cool, let's do it. Or he may say, I like that. I just want to change it a little bit like this. So it's been wonderful to work with him. He just finished reading the draft. From what he texted me, he loved everything he read. So we're going to go over, the few things to make sure that everything's ready to go. Then it's going through the editing process, specifically from a spelling and grammar standpoint. Once that's all done, we actually have to start doing all of the page layouts because this is going to be a heavily visual book, not just a book with some spot illustrations here and there. There's going to be a lot of wonderful illustrations and photography. So it's a really heavy project to get done, but our goal is still to be able to, at the very least, solicit it for this calendar year.
Awesome. So excited.
I'm excited.
So, as you know, this was the first time that we heard about the book. Yep. And we were sitting in the audience when you were reading all of this and sharing with us that you were writing the book, which was 2022 Legions Con.
Yep.
So super excited about that. I've also told you that this is the whole reason I got into the line. So can you give me something on her from the book?
Let me think. Well, I will tell you that as a fan, I've said before that I'm writing the story and I'm like so excited to write it because I want to read it. Like I'm writing it and reading it at the same time. Like I want to know where these characters go. I want to be on this journey with them. There are a number of characters that I have fallen more in love with after writing them. And the 2 main ones that definitely is the case is Scapular and Artemis. Both of them are so much fun to write. I always liked Artemis. I actually do like the Artemis 2 figure much better than the Artemis 1. The Artemis 1 is very much her and her coronation attire, where this is how Artemis is going to appear in the bulk of the story as she's adventuring. So she is absolutely so much fun to write because she's a very interesting character in the sense that when you look at the different leaders of the heroic factions, she is both the oldest and the youngest at the same time. So in terms of actual years in Mythos, she's actually the oldest. She's Fae. She's basically ageless. So she has been alive in Mythos much longer than the other faction leaders for the Legions of Light. However, she is just taking over the Xylonis flock when we start the book. So the coronation of Artemis Silvercord, it is both in the game because the Mythic Legions game was another thing that I had to work around. I didn't want something that was done in the game to contradict something that was done in the book, the same way I don't want bios for the figures to contradict story in the book. That's why everything has to kind of try to jive. So the coronation is in the game. They've shown that before. They've shown some of those cutscenes. That is also one of the early scenes in the book as well. So she's an interesting character because, like I said, she's very, very new to her position. Her mentality is very much as like almost a teenager in some ways, yet she, in terms of just years, is older than all these other characters.
She's awesome. I can't wait to see like her story. To me, you've read a lot of the other stories or whatever, and I've listened to a lot of those, but you haven't read a whole lot on her. And her story and her, kind of given us a peek of what she's doing. And I have been very, very blessed in the fact that you guys came out with the Silverhorn Century. And the last one that I need that's actually in this picture is the Asterion. Yeah, I don't have him. But like the crew that's surrounding her, that protects her, that takes care of her, I've got all of those except for him. And so on the lookout.
One of the challenges, because it is a 2-volume book, you're not going to spend substantial time with every single character. So, that's one of the things too, is whenever there's a number of major characters in Mythic Legions, and there's a number of just minor characters, and there's a number of figures that aren't important in any way. And I'm not talking about the PowerCon figures. They're totally outside of the lore.
Right.
There are characters that are not going to have an impact in the story at all. But when I have a scene where I need to have a major character interact with somebody for something to get a piece of information or whatever, I try to work in the toys. I try to work in the characters because I do think it's important that they have some face time. Of those major characters, Artemis is definitely one of them, and the first volume is very, very flock heavy. There's a lot of Xylona's flock in that first volume.
Well, I'm super excited. Love to read. Cannot wait for this. And So
what I am curious about is take Figure Obscura, right? So we just released Marley, and he came with a surprise.
Yep.
And there's this big debate about like, oh, can we share the surprise? Can we not share the surprise? How long before we can share the surprise? I am so curious what is going to happen with this book, because there are some surprises in there. There are some characters that you are going to learn some stuff about, and you are just going to go, wow, I did not see that coming. And it makes me really wonder, because there's going to be some of us who are very fast readers who are going to breeze through this thing and know the story. And there's going to be other people that it's going to take them forever to get through it. So it will be interesting to see what the moratorium is on spoilers from that first volume.
So let's go ahead and tell everybody that we are going to start a specific chat for those of us who are fast readers, and do not enter this chat unless you know and have read the book, or you want to know, because we are going to be talking about it.
I love it.
Let's just go ahead and put that out there. Because if I read it, I'm going to want to go, did you see? Flex. I'm off Facebook for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that is going to be, when that comes out, it's going to be a very anxiety-ridden time for me, because, as much as I do, so it's my job to read the comments, which the internet's an awful place most of the time. And
Right.
we are very, very fortunate that our community is incredibly positive. But even, we see some of the negativity, and even, the public accounts for the Four Horsemen that I have to maintain. I have to read some of those negative comments, and it's hard not to take things personal sometimes, because we put so much of ourselves into what we do that it's just it's definitely hard to read some of the comments. This book is even more so, because this book is so much of my creative output that it's inevitable that some people aren't going to enjoy the story. They're not going to like my writing style. I have a very specific writing style. They're not going to particularly like it, maybe. There are going to be some people. I mean, one of the great things about Mythic Legions is it's an open world, so people have created their own headcanon, and I'm going to change that in some ways. There are going to be some characters that were like, no, this is the actual story, and they're not going to like that because they like their version better. And that's fine. You can have your fan fiction type version of the character.
Right.
We're not saying you can't, but it is going to be a somewhat stressful time for me as I read those comments and hope for the best.
Well, just know that I'm going to be right up there at the beginning.
Okay.
And I am super excited. I think that
Good.
this is going to be amazing. And from what you've read to us on your show, what you did in the at Legions Con with a room full of people, what you've read, like, you have made me super excited about reading it. I love what you've done already, what you've read to us already. And for me, I think that's probably one of the things that I am most excited about, because I get your style. I understand where you're coming from. And so I am excited about it. And
my big hope with the book is that it takes everybody's fandom and ramps it up. Like, someone who's already a super fan, I hope that it gets them even more excited for an attachment to these characters, because I fall in that category. And again, I've long said that my secret, when the first project I ever worked on for Four Horsemen was the website, and we've gotten so much positive feedback over the years on Source Horsemen. And I've always said to people, my secret was I built the website I wanted. I built, as a fan, I built the website in the resources that I thought would be helpful and important. So that's how I've approached really everything I've done. Is I have never lost sense of being a super fan of this world and this line. And that's exactly how I'm approaching the book as well. So I hope that super fans, that just gets them that much deeper. I hope that more casual fans, it makes them say, wow, I thought the toys were cool, but there's actually a really deep story here. These are really cool characters. And then on the other end of the spectrum, people that maybe have stayed away from the line because there isn't something like a movie or a comic book or a television show that they can relate to. I hope that they give it a chance and they say, you know what? I've heard about Mythic Legions. I like fantasy. Let me give this a read. And I hope that it gets them to say, oh, now I do know these characters. And maybe they won't be a completist and buy every figure, but maybe they'll say, you know what? Artemis is super, super cool. I need to hunt down that Artemis figure.
Yeah.
Well, and through your Figure Obscura releases, I know that we have, gotten a lot more collectors, just because those are literary people recognize the characters and they're getting into the line after seeing that. So that is my hope too, is that they see the book, they read the book, and then they get into the story and get into the characters. I'm hopeful for that as well.
The goal.
All right. Well, we are at just after 9 o'clock, and I don't like to stay late. I wake up at 4:30 every morning, so for me, being on late is not fun. So we have put out on Legions, ladies, and this is something that I was super excited about. Told everybody that we were bringing you on tonight, and we got a list of questions from the Legions, ladies, and we are going to zoom through these, and they're random. So
okay, that's fine. I will do my best. I will do my best not to be too verbose in my answers so we can get through them.
But I am super excited about these. Amber, I'm going to start at cats or dogs, and you go for the next one, okay? So, Jeremy, cats or dogs?
I love them both, but if I have to pick one, cats.
Okay.
And your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
And your favorite pizza topping?
Actually, I really like plain just cheese. If I have to put something on it, I also really like Hawaiian pizza.
Oh, love it!
I love pineapple on pizza.
Ham and pineapple, so good. We had that the other week.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, that's a hard one. The first one that popped in my head was Kubo and the Two Strings.
Okay, elaborate. Where is this from? When is this from?
So Kubo and the Two Strings is a stop motion animation movie done by I can't remember the name of the company now. It's the same company that did like Coraline and Paranorman and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just it's a Japanese like fairy tale type story. Just really, really wonderful little fun movie that's just beautiful, and the artistry of it, like the behind the scenes artistry of it, similar to like Nightmare Before Christmas, where it's all stop motion. It's just incredibly impressive what they were able to do with that movie.
Well, we're going to have to find that one because I would like to see that now. Okay. Do you have a favorite horror movie?
I am not a big fan of horror movies in general. It's not my favorite genre, but if I had to pick a favorite, I do love me a good horror comedy. So it would probably be a horror comedy, and I have seen a number of them that I like. Cabin in the Woods is one that I like very, very much. That's a weird movie, but there's if I go a little older, it's kind of comedy. Lost Boys from my childhood. I love me some Lost Boys.
Love that one.
Those are two. One of the better ones I saw recently was what did I see this year? It's a movie with the girl. It's a time travel horror movie with the girl that played in the new Sabrina show. Totally Killer. Totally Killer.
Yeah.
Totally Killer was awesome as well.
All right.
Awesome.
Let's see. Favorite TV show as a kid and your favorite TV show now?
I don't watch a lot of TV. Like TV from when I was a kid versus now are two wildly different things.
Oh, very different.
Because now, like, what's a TV show now at this point? It's like everything is streaming, so I don't know what a TV show is. Favorite TV show as a kid? God. I mean, I'm going to say the A-Team. I love me some Mr. T.
Yeah.
As far as favorite TV show now, as a kid, though, I also really loved, and I've said this many times, all of like the Rankin Bass. You asked me about my favorite holiday, I said Christmas. All the Rankin Bass holiday specials, those were favorites as well. As far as favorite shows now, some that I've seen recently that I really, really liked, I've really been watching a lot of Apple TV, and I've really enjoyed that. I mentioned that show C that I watched.
Mm-hmm.
There's a show on Apple TV called Shrinking with Harrison Ford and Jason Segel that was absolutely wonderful. We just got done watching one called Lessons in Chemistry with Brie Larson that was fabulous as well. Those are ones. Those were all really, really good shows. And I know I'm missing a ton of shows. I know I'm missing a ton of shows that I really, really like, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Lessons in Chemistry was a good show, but it was a better book.
Better book?
So, yeah. Yeah, I got to read the book before I watched the show, so.
Okay.
What was your favorite Christmas gift this year?
So my wife got me, you know what? I'm going to show you right. I'll pull it out of the case because it's literally right here. My wife got me this giant Snoopy from Super 7.
Oh, awesome.
So it's Snoopy is the World War II flying ace. This is from Super 7. And I'd had my eyes on this thing for quite some time. And my wife and I still totally buy each other toys for Christmas. So she got me this, and it's awesome. The box he comes in is actually shaped like his doghouse. So this is absolutely my favorite. This is my favorite gift that I got this year.
That's fantastic, Jeremy. I love that.
Let's see. What was your favorite Christmas gift as a child?
The one that I can remember is there was a year right after Empire Strikes Back came out, so early 80s, where my parents just got me like every Star Wars figure that had come out at that point. And it was just like, I can remember sitting down with the back of the box and the checklist and just checking off every one that I'd gotten and like completing the whole box. And that memory of being able to do that was actually one of the reasons why when Nate, Eric, and I started talking about the back of the package for Cosmic Legions, the idea of that cross-sell checklist like geeked us all out. And I remembered that Christmas and doing that. And I'm sure they remembered similar experiences. So that kind of came around full circle. But yeah, that Christmas getting all the Empire Strikes Back Star Wars figures was a big one.
That's awesome. So, cool. Side note, my husband collected Star Wars about the same time period that you did. And he got an extra Luke so that he could burn his arm off.
That's awesome.
To me, that's one of the best stories. Okay. Where did you grow up?
So I'm a lifelong Rhode Islander. I've lived in Rhode Island my entire life. I grew up in a town in northern Rhode Island called Woonsocket.
Huh. Are you an only child?
I am not. I have a younger sister.
Oh.
And do you live close to your parents now?
I do not. My parents live in Florida.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh.
They got tired of the winters?
They did. They did. When they, my parents and my sister all live in Florida. When they retired, they were like, we are done with New England winters. So they moved down to the Cape Coral, Fort Myers area in Florida.
Huh.
Awesome.
Let's see. What was your first pet, if you had one?
Do you count fish?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Well, I had fish. That was the first thing my parents never wanted us to have a cat or a dog growing up. So they got us fish. The first non-fish pet we had was a cat.
Gotcha. What was your favorite vacation that you went on as a kid?
As a kid, probably Disney. That's a pretty easy bet. That's the one that I certainly remember the most is going there.
Let's see. So those two were already answered. What is your absolutely best memory as a kid?
You know, as a kid, every year for my birthday, my aunt Stella, who's my father's sister, she would come and pick me up, and she would bring me over to a store called Child World. So Child World was it's very much a Northeast thing, There was one in Woonsocket where I lived. I don't think that it was a chain that was far outside of the New England area. But it was very similar to like a Toys R Us. It was a very, very large toy specific store. If you've ever seen those photos of like early 80s toy stores where like the aisles were just packed with like G.I. Joe and Transformers and stuff, that was Child World. So she would come pick me up every year for my birthday and take me to Child World and say, get what you want. I clearly had a budget, but I didn't know what it was. Like she had a budget in her head and she'd be like, oh, you can get something else. I can get something else. And she'd say, okay, I think we're good there. But as a kid who didn't have his own money, like being able to go to a toy store and just be like, Skeletor, you know, and pick things off the shelf was absolutely awesome. And it's why I got a lot of weird toys when I was a kid. I played with the big ones, G.I. Joe and Transformers and Star Wars and He-Man. But there was a lot of just weird toys back then that I got during those visits with my aunt. So that whole experience of going out to a genuine toy store for my birthday, that's probably my favorite memory from being a kid.
That's cool. What was your very first car?
Very first car that my parents gave me when I graduated, an old Nissan Stanza. That's the car that they gave me, a Nissan Stanza. The first car I ever purchased was a Mustang.
Ooh, what was your favorite car?
After the Mustang, I had let me think for a second. No, actually it was before the Mustang. Okay, so before the Mustang, because I traded in the truck for the Mustang. After the Nissan Stanza, I bought a truck, and it was a Ford Bronco that had like one of those lift kits on it that was so absolutely unnecessarily ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was stupid, so stupid, but I loved driving it because it was so incredibly silly. And the front of it had this giant wrought iron bumper on it because it had like a winch and everything. And I remember being at work one day and someone came in and they said, does someone here drive a big Ford Bronco? And I was like, yeah, I do. And they were like, someone just hit your car. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I'd only had it for like a month. And I was visibly upset, and they laughed and they said, oh, don't worry, your truck is fine. They had some kind of sports car, and they were being an idiot, lost control, and they slammed into the truck. But the truck was so high with a giant iron bumper that it just obliterated their car. And they sped off. So I went out there. There was like 2 scratches on the front of the bumper and all kinds of pieces of fiberglass from their car. So for years, I had a piece of fiberglass hanging from my rear view mirror of this car that just shattered itself against the bumper of my truck. That was my favorite. That was my favorite one to drive.
That's awesome. Oh. What was your high school mascot?
Keep in mind, I graduated in '93, so it was a very different time. It was the Villanovan, which was a very probably racially insensitive Indian warrior type character.
We were the Indians.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
What college did you go to?
So I went to a trade school called the New England Institute of Technology. It was basically like a technical school. When I went, it was just they had day and night classes. I went to night classes. They didn't have on-campus housing. They do now. They have actually a really nice new campus now that has housing and so forth. But when I went there, it was just basically a very local Rhode Island type technical college.
And what is your favorite food besides Bonefish Grill?
If I had, I'll say this: my favorite food is sushi. But if I had to only eat one food, like going forward, it would be pizza.
Good pick. Let's see. What is your favorite fast food?
So my first real job was at a McDonald's, and I worked at McDonald's for about 6 or 7 years. And most people, when they've worked at a place, they lose their taste for it. But for whatever reason, I've always loved McDonald's. I don't eat much fast food, but if I was going to get fast food, it would be McDonald's.
That's awesome. Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I am left-handed.
Did you play any sports growing up?
I did, but I was one of those kids who I played. My father was very, very athletic. It's interesting. The 3 generations, my grandfather, who died when my father was very young, I never met him, but he was very handy. So he was the kind of guy that would like build and fix things. My father got none of that. My father was very, very athletic. I didn't get either of those. I got the artistic stuff. So growing up, because my father was athletic, he would, I played football and I played baseball. But once I got a little bit older, I actually got into music and I started playing in bands, and I kind of left all of the sports stuff behind.
So do you follow sports now at all? And do you have a favorite team?
I do not follow sports. If I had to pick a favorite team, it would just be the local ones here in Rhode Island, New England, Boston type area. But I am I have followed sports in the past, but that's definitely one of those things with my busy schedule these days. It's not real practical for me to follow sports teams.
Gotcha.
This one's a weird one. Toilet paper, over or under?
Beards are cool, mullets are bad. So I guess that's over, right?
Yes.
Yes, because beards are cool, mullets are bad.
The right way. Thank you very much. If you were going to Subway or Jersey Mike's or whatever, what is your favorite sub?
So I do mix it up a bit. I will say I wouldn't go to Subway. I can't stand Subway. If I had to eat Subway, if I was at like a rest stop and I had no option, it would probably be tuna fish. But we have a local sub shop here called Jay's Deli that I like a lot. And I do get a couple different ones, but my go-to would be an Italian grinder.
Okay.
Do you call it pop or soda? And what is your favorite?
I call it soda. I don't drink much of it, but if I do, I would drink a Diet Coke.
All right. And basically the last question. Oh, nope. Are we ever going to get a werewolf or a wolf?
So all I can say to that is I have even asked Eric on my show if werewolves exist in mythos, and he said, yes, they do.
Awesome.
All right. And last but not least, what is one thing that you can tell us that you haven't told anyone else?
Oh, jeez. Oh, okay. You got to give me a minute to think about this. Something I can tell you that I haven't told anybody else. Oh, I wish I would have known that question because I would have actually gotten something good. Oh, man. So I want it to be good, but I can't reveal something that I'm not supposed to reveal. Okay. I know.
Well, we don't mind if you reveal it.
I know what I can reveal. This isn't bad. Figure Obscura.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have asked if there will be the retailer versions of the Figure Obscura characters that we did this year. The answer to that is yes.
Yay!
So
Hey.
you don't know when that will be yet, but yes, we've said all along that if the demand is there and there's a cool idea, because that's the whole thing is we want it to be different. We want it to be cool and desirable. We're not just going to do it to do it. We don't ever do that. So, if we have cool ideas, which we do, it's something that we will absolutely do. So you can look for that this year.
All right. Tanya, do you have any more questions?
I don't have any. We went through all the questions. Jeremy,
That was a lot of
you
fun.
are amazing. Thank you so much.
That was so much fun. That was so when you said the questions are random, like I thought they were going to be random questions about like the toys and stuff. They were random questions about me, but I was like, yeah, sure.
No, when I say that we're going to have random questions, I really mean they're
You really meant random questions. Yeah, I certainly did not expect to tell the story of someone hitting my Ford Bronco tonight, but hey, that's cool.
It was awesome. It was
So awesome.
I had a
Jeremy,
blast.
We truly appreciate you coming on, hanging out with the Legions ladies, giving us a scoop on all kinds of crazy things in your life, and especially talking toys with us. It was one of the funnest nights, and just want to let you know that we appreciate it. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate what you are doing here. I had mentioned before the show started that you have a number of fans amongst the members of the studio. We are so happy that you are bringing your specific voices to this community, talking about your passion for these toys from your perspective. So thank you to you as well. Please keep it up. And I was thrilled to be a guest tonight. Anytime you want to have me on, all you have to do is ask. I'd be happy to join you.
Well, we look forward to the next time. We're going to take one moment. I am going to add this over here. We have been blessed with a bunch of the community who have shows actually shouting out our show and getting everybody excited to come and watch us. So I just wanted to pay respects to all of them, thank them, and just every day of the week and sometimes 2 or 3 in a day our upcoming Legions shows. So please set your phones, watch them afterwards, whatever you got to do, but you guys go check out some other upcoming Legion shows, especially Mythic Conversations on Wednesday nights with Jeremy. All right, Jeremy, we are going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for supporting us here and just being an amazing community that we love so much. Jeremy, we just cannot thank you enough for being a part of this community and just hanging out with us, because it was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we will see you next time in a couple of weeks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.